Hi, Stefan speaking. I'm at the site on La Floresta. Today I would like to talk about biochar. Um, Here I'm doing permaculture, and permaculture, the idea of permaculture is about biomimicry. We try to mimic nature. So when everyone speak about biochar on internet, I think they miss an important point, which is maybe the solution is not to try to make the perfect biochar, to enrich the carbon a certain way, to analyze, to make experiment with different plants, etc. Yes, that's interesting, but I think what is more interesting is to look for how to mimic how the Indian from Amazonia, who are the one who developed this technique of biochar to make the Amazon fertile, which is not fertile, and the soil has been washed out, and so how to mimic the use of carbon and biochar to make a soil fertile. And this, let's say, process has to be a dynamic process. Okay, when we try to mimic nature, in this case we will mimic a civilization which has disappeared for many reasons, colonization, viruses, etc., etc., and mimic not only the function, not only the biochar and what it is, but mimic the process. So what they did to fertilize the soil, they they use fire to cook to make pottery. That's certainly a big factor in the creation of biochar and the fertilization of the soil. By the way, if you want to know more about this, how the biochar has been used in Amazonia by the Caribbean Indian civilization, just go on internet, and there is a BBC documentary about that. It's called Terra Preta do Indio. Terra Preta signifies the earth, back earth from the Indian, from Amazon. So if you read the different studies, university studies, you can see that it's not very clear how biochar, in which extent, what are the property and particularities of biochar which make it so powerful in fertilization. There is this in podology is that when you add biochar to or carbon to clay, it will increase the drainage. So it will improve the soil in terms of agua, water management. And if you add, it will make it more like flowy. It will help the flow. It will avoid that the water stay and make anaerobic fermentation. And as well, when you put it in the sand area, it will do the opposite. It will decrease the drainage, meaning that you will have a better soil because it will make more water retention. So that's the physical property, and let's say the biological properties is mainly it's a lot of surface area, so a lot of bacteria can settle there. They are protected from the lixiviation, that the water is removing all nutrients, so we'll keep the nutrient and we'll reduce the rate of mortality in the microorganisms. It will really make a very stable environment for microorganisms and all the web food of the soil to thrive. So, And you can imagine as well that in the biochar you have different composition. And some of the biochar can be edible for the microorganisms as well. The idea of biochar is that it will stabilize the carbon, meaning that it will not degrade, and in tropical area, which is where the bacterial degradation is very high, then it will give us a sort of stability. But some of the biochar in the process of pyrolysis or burning wood will as well produce ashes and produce a carbon which could be edible by microorganisms. So all this is not very clear in terms of studies. There is university studies as well which show that depending on the temperature which has been reached during the production of charcoal, the result in terms of acidity and alkalinity is very different. More you go up in temperature, more your result will be alkaline, and more you are down in the pyrolysis burning, more the acidity will be high. So coming back to the point of biomimicry is that if you make a fire, if you have a stove, wood stove, and you burn wood and you get back the charcoal and the ashes, what you can expect is that you will have a melting pot of average cooked wood. You will have wood which has been poorly cooked, other which has been so much cooked that it's just ash. So you can imagine that in the process you will have a kind of average in terms of result for acidity and alkalinity. So that's why I want to show here is that instead of trying to make, let's say, tentative of applying biochar to your garden, etc., maybe the best is to mimic the process of this Indian from Amazonia and mimic the process, meaning that you will use wooden stove and you will cook your food with that. Specifically, when we do a stew, for example, here I have a very quickly done stove made with clay. We did that in half an hour. First, we did the bricks with clay, and then the stove was done very quickly. And now every week I will do a stew for the week with a lot of vegetables. And there is one particularity as well of this kind of cooking is that if you use a clay pot, you will produce food which has a lot of nutrients because it keeps the nutrient. The pot has an alkaline effect, so it will reduce acidity of your food, and which is good for health. Here I have the pot. I am preparing a stew, very simple, just vegetables, and it's incredible. When I cook that, it's very, very tasty. And I can let, I am in the tropic there, I could let the pot outside for, I don't know, for one day, entire day, and there will not have any bacterial attack on that food, which is a very positive thing in the tropics, because every time you let something outside, very quickly it degrades and you start to have, you can throw your food. So the idea is that let's mimic the Indian. What they did cooking with wood, and after the cooking, what they do, they get if you see that, you can get the rest of non-burned wood and ashes and use it for your garden. First you enrich it with anything that you have, like chicken manure, like other kind of manure if you have it, urine as well you can use, grass from the garden, etc., etc., green stuff, etc. So you enrich it, and that after you use for the garden. So that's I think that's the spirit of permaculture. Instead of it's systemic approach, meaning that we don't have to understand exactly scientifically how it works. What we have to do is to analyze the system. So here it's a process. and instead of to try to understand every bit of this cavity of carbon whatsoever, you prefer to set up a system, a process, which will give a result, and you will analyze the result. Then you will see, okay, what could I change in the way I do my process to improve the result. Of course, you can read on the internet the different analysis which exist, because it will help you to better understand your process and the different elements of the process, steps and result, intermediate result you want to have. But the idea is more like, okay, let's stick to let's mimic nature. In this case, nature with this civilization of Indian from Caribbean, from South America, and at the same time, you don't even. The biochar is not only is not the main purpose. The main purpose is how to cook. If you want to do pottery and clay and burn your clay, etc., you can do it as well. So the idea is that instead of and every time I do permaculture, I try to be multifunctional in the processes. Is when I do an action, I try to have two outcomes. In this case, I do my cooking. I have a super food and a super very tasty and it's cooked slowly and very healthy food. At the same time, I have a sub-product which is biochar with charcoal, and then biochar like I use for the garden. So it's a win-win situation. And of course, with time, there will be more analysis about how biochar can be improved, etc. But at this time, I will use that information.